Do we really understand what happened here?
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic community in true crime. The pastor killed his wife is one theory, and Mica's mental health is another way of trying to understand what happened. But a third dimension is that Mica wanted revenge. Mica wanted revenge. Consider the timing and the specific context of the divorce at that time. The timing was a Saturday afternoon, and the dynamics at the time were very clearly tit for tat, much of it expressed on social media by both parties. Was it time? Did someone feel it was time to take things to the next level? Now, it's one thing to throw timing and the dynamics out there in the context of a revenge motive, but we really need to drill deeper to appreciate what we're talking about. And that is a little bit difficult to do if you can't really say certain words on YouTube. You know what I'm talking about. But essentially what we're talking about is this idea of trying to make him look bad. If you think about Mica wanting justice for herself, was this idea of justice for herself, was this the idea of justice for herself? And if it was, hasn't she succeeded? Now, before we get to that in more detail, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So let's go to the timing context. Now, I often find the timing of a case to be a crucial lens to gain incisive insights and perspectives. There's so many cases that happen on holidays, on important days. It could be Christmas, Thanksgiving, and that is always, or Valentine's Day. That is always giving you that alone. That date is giving you an insight into the dynamics in a way that sometimes you don't expect. The timing in this case is that it happens on a Saturday afternoon, not a Friday or a Tuesday or a Thursday, a Saturday afternoon, which means the news hits late Saturday, essentially when Pastor John Paul needs to start preparing for his next sermon. Michael also makes sure the news hits by calling 911. It's not as though she just disappears and no one really says anything, and then someone starts realizing something perhaps on Sunday night or Monday morning. She makes sure the news hits by, basically late Saturday afternoon. And she also makes sure that it hits by relying on the right authority. She doesn't call a friend who might not really react or do something. She calls the authorities to make sure that there's a search and that the search is going to find her. She also makes sure that she's found. And if you think about that, there are quite a few cases I covered in the UK where it seems like people don't want to be found. They kind of want to just disappear. And they don't tell anyone where they are, and they don't make that sort of aspect easy. But she did want to be found. She does give her location. And so they search and they find her late on Saturday afternoon, I guess, just as Mica wanted, just as she'd planned. And guess what? It's just in time for the news to fully explode. It's almost like dropping a bomb first thing Sunday morning. Wasn't that by design? Now, if you think about it, if Mica wanted to do something, she wants to do something to cause maximum damage to her ex-husband, reputational damage. She wants to send kind of a shockwave through the church that he owns. And when we're talking about damage, we're talking about reputation. Consider what she did and the timing of it. In his sermon, he had to acknowledge at the end of it that he'd received a call just hours earlier, the previous night. We also know that he knew just how damaging the news would be, which is why he tried so hard to contain it, which is why when he made the announcement, he made it the way he did. really restricting it in such a way, asking the congregation to stand right at the end of the service, asking them not to talk to one another about the whole thing, and asking them to exit the church after the announcement. The part that perhaps not everyone appreciates is that Mica probably knew she could score a home run against John Paul by dropping this sort of reputational bomb on him. And let's face it, he's still facing the repercussions of it. So the timing is one important clue, I feel, into this theory. But another one is the Ruinous dynamics. Have you ever witnessed what they sometimes refer to as an acrimonious divorce, where people decide to air their dirty laundry? And that's a nice way of putting it, where people really go for one another, go for one another's throats in a sort of war of words, where the one is trying to take down the other. And obviously it's taking them down in terms of their reputations, basically trying to say that person is the bad guy, right? And we know that Pastor John Paul, or it certainly appeared that Pastor John Paul was doing that with Mica, and it also seems like Mica was responding on her own social media, and the pastor would refer to Facebook and rumors and comments, and then he would respond to that on the pulpit. So he would kind of use the church podium as a kind of platform to sort of blast, send salvos and warning shots and blasts, right? And we know how Mica felt about that. We know our sister felt about that. We know that that was hurting her, that was causing damage. We know that it was having some kind of impact. And so that's the other aspect where you might think, didn't she want to execute some form of counterattack? And did she feel she had the ammunition to do that? So, besides the timing aspect, the Saturday afternoon, the 911 call, the fact that the two of them were sort of locked in a full-blown war at the time is really important. It was 48 hours that he'd been served with divorce papers. Things were really kind of reaching a climax. She was divorcing him, and so they were both locked in that sort of tit-for-tat ruinous divorce phase. Accusations, name-calling, finger-pointing, scoring points in some revenge. And I think revenge comes up in some of his messages to her. And so didn't she perhaps feel the same way? Just to reiterate, some of Mica's last social media posts seem to bear out this idea of shooting arrows back at John Paul, but now she wanted something stronger than an arrow. And perhaps she felt outgunned. I mean, if you were in her position, wouldn't you have felt the same way? Perhaps she felt outgunned towards the end because he had this entire church under his control. He had all the resources of the church under his control. He owned the church. And perhaps she wanted to play an ace card of her own. So what do you think? Did she embarrass him? Well, we know she did. If she felt she was losing or had lost, perhaps she wanted to score a fatal blow herself. Well, didn't she? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.